Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday. It is the 7th of December. It's Rabbi Akiva Males, and we're getting ready for Parshas Vayishlach. I thank you for joining us, and I want to share something with you that I saw this week that I found very interesting. There are a number of fascinating points and storylines that we'll read this week in Parshas Vayishlach. And there's one very disturbing one, that is about the abduction and the assault of Dinah. We know that there were 12 Shvatim, there were 12 sons that were born to Yaakov between his wives. And as far as the Torah tells us, there's one daughter, Dinah. And we read the tragic episode this week in Vayishlach about how she is abducted by Shechem soon after they've returned to the land of Canaan, and how her brothers Shimon and Levi liberate her. They come up with a scheme to tell this Shechem, and who's the chief of the king, the ruler of that area, and his father Hamor, as well as the whole city. All the men have to circumcise themselves. They wait till they're very weak, recovering from their bris milah, from their circumcision. They attack. They kill all the males. They plunder the town. They free their sister Dinah. That's the basic story that takes place. We're going to see an approach to this story that I saw this week from Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, we've quoted here many times. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky was one of the choice products, you could say the Talmidim Muvhakim, real students of the Slobodka Yeshiva before the Holocaust. And he, together with a number of his contemporaries who were also graduates of the Slobodka Yeshiva in Lithuania, came to America as well as Israel and helped rebuild the yeshiva world after the Holocaust. I want to share with you some questions that Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky has on this episode, as well as his approach, how he learns it, and it's fascinating. And then if we have time, we're also going to see how this fits like a glove with what he writes. What he says is almost, you might call it, the follow-up of this story, as we'll see in Parshas Vayechi, at the end of Sefer Bereshis. So let's see. Here are the psukim that we're going to look at, because these are the psukim that Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky analyzes. So let's see, in this chapter, it's Perek Lamed Daled. Let's start with Pasuk Hey. Yaakov Shama ki timeas Dina bito, that Yaakov heard that his daughter Dinah had been abducted, had been contaminated, defiled by Shechem. And then it tells us, Ubanav hayuas miknei basada, his sons, the Shvatim, the tribes, they were with the sheep out in the field. Yaakov kept silent until they came home. Another pasuk that's going to come up is Yud Gimel 13. Vayanu b'nei Yaakov v'Shechem v'Eschamor aviv b'mirma v'yidaberu. That the sons of Yaakov, they answered back to Shechem and his father Hamor using mirma. Mirma can mean trickery or cunning. And this is what they said. And then the pasuk says, oh, by the way, Asher Timeas Dina Achosam. Don't forget that the reason, it almost sounds like it's saying the reason why they felt justified to come up with this plot was because they had defiled their sister Dinah. Another pasuk, 3 of the 4 psukim, number 3 is pasuk Lamed, the 30th pasuk in this parak. V'yomer Yaakov al Shimon ve'al Levi. So Shimon and Levi were the ones who led the attack and attacked Shechem and killed all the males. Yaakov says to them, Achartem osi, you have troubled me. Lavisheni v'yoshev aretz, you've discredited me amongst the inhabitants of this land. B'knani, b'prizi, all the Kanani and the Prizi that are here. V'ani mesei mispar, our family is very few in number. V'nesfu alai, they're all going to gather up against me. V'ikuni, and they could attack. V'nishmarti ani besi, and destroy me in my house. That was the complaint that Yaakov says to them, and their response is very strange. They just answer back, Vayomru, here's what they say back, should they treat our sister like a harlot? And we don't see any response from Yaakov to that. Let's take a look at Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. Based on these 4 psukim, he's going to ask some questions, and he's going to set up an approach to how to understand this story. So let's see. This is in Rav Yaakov's Sefer Emes LeYaakov. There are numerous questions that just come jumping out at us. Aleph, his first question. In Pasuk Hey, it says, V'Yaakov Shema ki tameas Shechem es Dina bito. Yaakov heard what happened. Ubenav ayu mikneu basodeh. And the sons were out with the sheep in the field. V'achrish Yaakov ad ba'am. He stayed silent until they came home. Why did Yaakov stay silent until his sons came home from the field? He didn't have a response to say to them. In other words, they came to his house saying that Shechem is infatuated with your daughter. He has her. He sees her. She's in his palace, you might say. And Yaakov says, let's wait till the boys come home. What? Yaakov didn't have what to say? Next question, Bays. What does the pasuk mean when it says Asher timeas dina achosam? That the brothers answered cunningly in a very sneaky fashion because Shechem had defiled Dinah, their sister. Why is the Torah throwing in this point about Asher timeas dina achosam? Just say that the brothers answered in a very sneaky fashion. Why does the pasuk have to throw in that detail? Oh, by the way, this is the same Shechem who had defiled their sister Dinah. Third question, Gimel. The Sofa Sipur at the end of the story, after Shimon and Levi killed the man, Kas Yaakov al Shimon Valevi. Yaakov's upset at them, and he says, You've really messed me up here. You've made me disgraceful in the locals' eyes. But pasuk lamed off, and the next pasuk mavur Shimon and Levi on Yaakov. What do they simply answer? Hachazoni yases achosenu. What, we should let her be treated like a harlot? V'lo matzinu sheYaakov yanalam. We don't find anywhere that Yaakov responded. Chanir shehiskim in tainasam. It sounds almost as if by the fact the Torah doesn't record a response from Yaakov, it sounds as if Yaakov's agreeing. But is that true? Did Yaakov end up agreeing? If Yaakov agreed, then why does he curse them in Vayechi? He says he doesn't curse them, he curses their anger and their sense of how they jumped on the situation without consulting him first. But he obviously is not okay with what they did. Yet you don't see anywhere in the Psukim here that he responds to them. Dalet is fourth question. When they give them the advice that you guys all got to circumcise, just the same way we're circumcised, Yaakov Yaakov clearly sees, he's in the room, he clearly sees that they're coming up with a whole plan, and it's a sneaky plan. He knows that his sons have no intention of intermarrying with the locals. So he knows that they're up to something. They clearly just want to deceive them so they could attack. So now we got to understand. So why did he wait until after they did the deed, until he jumps out at Levi and Shimon and Levi and say, you guys, this was not smart what you did. You knew what they were going to do. You were in the room. You knew what they were going to do. You knew they weren't going to intermarry. Why didn't he voice his objection before they attacked? These are the questions that Rav Yaakov is asking on this episode. So we're going to see here how he wants to learn the episode in a manner that's going to answer these questions. So let's see. We're going to page 2 now, and on page 2 on the right column. In order to understand Yaakov's behavior, there are different ways that people might conduct themselves. The way a person conducts themselves is all dependent on the circumstances they find themselves in. The first way that people conduct themselves is in a straightforward, straight approach where there's no trickery involved. There's no shenanigans, there's no shtick. We might call that first approach. The first intentions is to act in a very straightforward manner. And under normal circumstances, that's the way a person should behave. We shouldn't engage in any form of trickery. We should act in a very straightforward fashion. But then there are times, there are times a person finds themselves in trying circumstances that if I act in a straightforward manner, I won't accomplish what needs to be done. If let's say I'm dealing with a very tricky, conniving person, if I'm dealing with someone who is a chess player, who's some kind of shenanigan puller, who's looking to connive and to cheat me, I can't act in a straightforward fashion. I've got to be his competition. I've got to act in a similar fashion in order to win in that exchange. As mukhrach, I've got to also act to act in a cunning manner. You might call that the approach B. That might be option B. So option A is to be a straight shooter. Option B is to be a little bit of a trickery guy. So normally I want to act as option A, but under trying circumstances, especially if I'm dealing with someone who's trying to trick me, then I've got to engage in option B. Let's see what he does now. When Shem and Chamor come to Yaakov to start haggling with him, what deal can we make that we can keep Dinah, and to unite our two families? Yaakov knows right away, with this type of crowd, you cannot act in a straightforward fashion. These people are evil, they're tricky. Look what they've already done to Dinah. These are not the type of people you can act with in option A. If I would try to threaten them and just say, I object, you are not going to have my daughter Dinah, and I demand a return right away, you better return her right away. If he's that really would be option A, how to respond to them. But what does Yaakov know? That's not going to work. That's not going to happen. These people are thugs, and they're not going to just return Dinah, even if he threatens them. Shechem and Chamor are not going to respond to that. So he can't, that is the straightforward approach to take, but Yaakov can't take it. It's not going to work with them. The only way to deal with this type of chavra is to act in a cunning fashion. To take option B. Aval Yaakov, but remember who Yaakov is. Yaakov is the epitome of emes. He's the epitome of truth. He doesn't have it in him to act in that fashion. Titan emes liYaakov. We say that Yaakov was the epitome of truth. Lo haya yochol laharshos atzmo lecharog midarcho migidro lisnagim Shechem v'Chamor be'irma. Even though he knows the only way to be successful in dealing with these thugs is to go with option B and to be in a trickery kind of fashion, Yaakov says, I can't do that. That's not who I am. It's not in my nature to act that way. And I've spent years and years of my life honing my skills of truth. I can't just switch gears and to there. I can't do it. And there's more than that. Yaakov has spent years of his life darshaning and trying to teach his generation how important it is never to budge from emes. He's also nervous that even if I could find the strength to act in a fashion that's not 100% emes, truthful, and it might be a little bit with cunning, it might be a little bit of trickery, and that's the only way to get Dinah out, and that needs to be done. It's justified. I can't be the one to do that because the world won't understand. It's going to be a Chilul Hashem. All the blogs are going to be reporting. The media will be all over this. All the NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, everyone's going to be reporting. Look at that Jew, Yaakov. He was the guy who for years and years and years has been preaching about MS. And now look how he behaved with Shechem and Chamor. He utilized option B. He utilized trickery. They're not going to make the distinction. Well, I had to do it this time because Dinah's life was on the line. They're not going to look at that. All they're going to do is take me down and say, look at that, a hypocrite. He spent his whole life preaching MS and now look how he behaved. So Yaakov says, A, I can't do it because it's just not who I am. And also, if I can find the strength to act with trickery, it's gonna be a Chilul Hashem. The whole world's gonna be talking about it. It'll defeat all the work I've invested. So what does Yaakov decide he's got to do? She says, you know what? I'm gonna be silent. I'm gonna wait till the boys come home. For the boys, they can use option B. They can deal with trickery, but I can't. That's what he's going to say. Yaakov could say, for the boys, for my sons, they're allowed to act this way because it's justified. And it won't be a Chilul Hashem because they're not the ones who have spent their whole life preaching emes. There are times where a person does have to take option B and to act in a deceitful fashion when you're going up against a thug. Like what the Navi says, if someone comes against you acting in a cunning fashion, you've got to do that in order to survive. Yaakov was just worried about himself. I personally can't act this way because this is going to create an enormous chil Hashem, because the blogs, the news, the media, everyone's going to pick up on it. They're going to miss the nuance of why it was okay. They're looking to take me down anyhow, and they'll jump on this. I can't do this. So when Yaakov realizes I can't do anything, I can't utilize option A just to demand her release because they're going to ignore that. And I can't utilize option B because I'm the paradigm of MS. I'm the epitome of MS. I've got to wait for my sons. I can't use machshava rishona v'lo machshava shniya. I cannot take option A or option B. That's why Yaakov waits till his sons come home, because they're the ones who are going to have to take that approach. So Yaakov now has answered his first question about, Yaakov had to wait till the boys come home. He's not capable of dealing with them himself. He was, but there's no approach he can use that's going to work. So let's go to the second point. Next column on the left. So now when Yaakov is thinking option B is the option to take with them, well, option B for Yaakov was different than the option B that the boys took. What was Yaakov's intent? According, he says, Kasher is Ramban, the way the Ramban learns it. Shal Yidei Amila, that if these guys would get bris milah, all the Shechemites, Yachlishu b'nei Yaakov esanshe Shechem. When he hears Shimon and Levi suggest, you guys just, all the b'nei Yaakov suggest, just get bris milah, and then we'll all be one. What does Yaakov think's going on? Oh, I know what they're doing. They're acting in a sneaky fashion. Their whole hope is that they're just going to make them weak, because they're going to be healing from their bris milah. And once they're weak, since they're weak, they won't be able to put up any resistance, and they'll just kick in the doors, and they'll go into Shechem's house, and they'll take Dina, and they'll leave. But who said anything about killing all the men? Yaakov, it didn't dawn on him that that's what the boys were planning. He thought what they're planning is get bris milah. That'll cause them all to get weak. Once they're circumcised and weak, they'll come in, kick in the doors, they'll just take Dina and run. Nothing about killing anyone. Pula yoser gedola mizu, klomer hachravas kolayir, to do something bigger, meaning destroying the town. Lohola Yaakov klal datu. Yaakov never imagined that's what the boys were thinking. Therefore, when Shimon and Levi did that, they took their swords and they killed all the men. Yaakov mufta umuchrad mepulasim. He was terrified by their actions. That's why he gives them a tongue lashing, and he says to them, that you've defiled me, and now they're all going to attack me. Shitaso Haisa, what was Yaakov's opinion? Even though based on these circumstances, you're allowed to act in a deceitful fashion. This far, you can't go ballistic. You can't pull out the nuclear option and attack and kill the town, all the male folk. All the Torah that I'm preaching in this world is built on MS, and that's what I've got to do. And I understand under these circumstances, you could be a little trickery, but on Noam, but be also being peaceful and being pleasant. Shakris, and acting with such lies, Barmilius and deceit, Kazush, Asu Shimon Valevi, this was far beyond what Yaakov would have ever sanctioned. So that's what he's saying, is that he knew some trickery needed to be employed, but he did not imagine that's what the boys were thinking. He thought their trickery was get circumcised, now they're weak, we'll kick in the doors, take Dina, and make a run for it. Never in his wildest dreams did Yaakov think they were going to use that as a pretext to now kill the whole city. And that's why Yaakov lashed out at them. So now what's their answer? So that explains why he's giving them a tongue lashing. But what did Shimon and Levi say back? Shuvasim shel Shimon v'Levi. What was their answer back to them? Should they make our sister into a harlot, into a whore? Nearest Kimoshe Nicha as Daito shel Yaakov. What are they doing? They're coming to placate Yaakov's mindset. Enu ona klum al divreim. And Yaakov, it's like they're not speaking to each other. Yaakov really did say something to them. Yaakov, you're right. Right now, Yaakov's not going to respond to them because he realizes they're too in the moment, they're worked up, they're not going to hear his rebuke. But did Yaakov agree with them? Absolutely not. Because years from now, we'll see that he did respond and he did criticize them. Many years later, when it came the time for Yaakov to pass away, in Parshas Vayishlach, he calls in all his sons to bless them. Amar Shimon v'Levi, says to Shimon and Levi, Shimon v'Levi achim klei chamas mecharasayim. Shimon and Levi, you are brothers, and the tools of Hamas, of treachery, those are your tools. Below Rakzeh Elishanisham, he even punished them. He said, Achal kem Yaakov, I will separate you amongst Jacob. Afitzem Yisrael, I'll scatter you amongst Israel. Pshuto ha'oneshu mida keneged mida imachet. According to a plain reading, this is measure for measure with what they did wrong. What does that mean? Klomar, Sharu Yemelu Sheyifradu. It makes sense that you guys should be split up. Below you biyachad, and don't be together. Kadesh lo yuchlu linakem lasos ra, because I don't want you to start taking vengeance and doing bad. This is what the commentaries explain, that Yaakov's intent was, I can't have something like this happen again, so I've got to split you up. But Rashi says that what was Yaakov really saying to Shimon and Levi? Shame you hasofrim v'amalamde tinokos. I want you to be the scribes and the educators of children. Sheyelchu me'ir le'ir, that you will go from town to town l'takenes tashmisha kedusha. As the sofrim, you will be the traveling sofrim who will go from town to town fixing mezuzahs, tefillin, Sifrei Torah, and you will teach Torah. This requires much explanation. So I understand the Pashut Pshat is that Yaakov cursed them to split them up to make sure nothing like this happens again. But Rashi quotes the Medrash that says there was more to this curse than that. Part of this curse is that they're going to be impoverished and they're going to have to hit the road to make a living. They're going to have to be traveling sofrim. They're going to be traveling educators. But why? What does that have to do with this? Why does Yaakov want to say that these guys, Dafka, specifically Shimon and Levi, they should be the traveling sofrim and the traveling educators? How is that measure for measure? So look what Rabbi Yaakov says, page 3. Yaakov saw about Shimon and Levi more than any of the other brothers. Matimim lemishra ramazeh. He said they are the most fitting to be Torah educators and the fixers of sacred scrolls, the sofrim, scribes. How? Because what did they respond to Yaakov when he asked them, how could you do this? They said back, Hakazona yasas achosenu? Could we sit by while our sister is made into a harlot, into a whore? Hivchin Yaakov, so what did Yaakov understand about them? Shem masru es kol mahusam. So they were willing to hand over their entire being. They were willing to put it all on the line to save their sister's dignity. All the other brothers also witnessed the pain, the hurt, their sister. They also said, we're going to do something, whatever we can to help her. It was only Shimon and Levi who felt her pain and her hurt so much, as if they themselves were hurt. And we'll look at the cry that came out of their mouths. How can we sit by while our sister is made to be a harlot? That made it very clear to Yaakov that their actions, as crazy as they were, to go attack and kill this whole town, where did it come from? It didn't come from a crazy bloodlust. It comes from an inner pain, a true inner pain that they experienced. They were able to really feel the pain of someone else, of their sister Dinah. This caused them to be filled with this sense of vengeance, boris that was burning inside them. That could not be calmed down. The only way they could calm down was by destroying an entire city. Only people with that type of attitude, who are able to feel the pain of another Jew, as if it's their own pain. Only they should take up the staff of wandering in their hands, and and basically put their lives on the line, and all their own success on the line, to wander from city to city, to spread God's Torah in this world, and to teach the children of Israel.
Rabbi,
Hello?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
do you think maybe by this time the guilt was
Let's just finish the paragraph. Let's just finish what he said. These tasks, these lofty tasks of being the scribes who are going to travel around Israel, fixing up Divrei Torah, tefillin, mezuzahs, only these tasks, and to educate Jewish children, they could only be done by people, only for people who were so passionate about God is in their heart, only them could take up this task. That's why Yaakov assigned them with this task. It comes out it comes out that Yaakov wasn't actually punishing them. He was rather channeling their energies. What did Yaakov do? Yaakov says, I'm putting this on hold and I'm going to find a good use for this passion that you have. You feel the pain of another like none of the other brothers did, Shimon and Levi. What can I do? How can I channel that for good? And that's what he did. We'll get to your question in a second. I just want to point out, what did Rav Yaakov do to answer his 4 questions? Just going back to page 1. He asked 4 questions. Question number 1 was, Yaakov heard from Shechem and Hamor what's going on with Dinah. Why did he say, let's wait till the boys come home? Why? So Rav Yaakov explained, because there's 2 ways to deal with them. Straightforward and say, no, chutzpah, you can't have her, give her back. That's not going to work. Or option B is to be a little full of trickery, but Yaakov himself can't do that. For my boys, it's justified, but me, I can't do that. That's not who I am. And if I act the way, the news is going to pick up on it and it'll be a chilul Hashem. What's his second question? His second question is that they said, Asher Timeas Dina Achosam. So it says, what? We didn't know that? Why is that? Why is the pasuk emphasizing Asher Timeas Dina Achosam? So again, what Rabbi Yaakov would say is that that's what got Levi and Shimon and Levi, that's what got them so worked up. And why it was justified to do what they did was because they had to act at this type of cunning, and they were acting in this type of cunning in this fashion. They felt that pain. They felt her pain specifically because of his hurt that she had experienced. His question number 3 was, at the end of the story, Yaakov's upset at them and says, "Ichartem osi," and then he doesn't answer. They don't, and then they answer back saying, "What? She should be made into a harlot?" And Yaakov doesn't answer back. That seems to say he agreed. Is that possible? So he's saying, no, he didn't agree. And in Parshas Vayishlach, you're going to see what he decides to do about this. He says, now's not the time to argue with them, but I don't agree with what they did. They went too far. What they should have done was just kicked in the doors and take her back. Who said anything about destroying the whole city? They went too far. What can I do to rechannel that rage that they have? Well, I see where the rage was coming from. It wasn't just anger. It was coming from, they felt Dina's pain. Oh, you're the type of person who feels another Jew's pain. I'm going to give you those 2 tasks of being the traveling sofrim and the traveling educators. And lastly, in that question number 4, where he says that if Yaakov's so upset at them, so then why didn't he speak up earlier? They said, get circumcised and you'll be able to join us. Yaakov clearly sees that's a scam then. Why didn't he speak up? So to that, Rabbi Yaakov would say, because what did he initially think they were going to do? They were just going to try to weaken them and then kick in the door. There was nothing about killing an entire city. That's why Yaakov didn't speak up earlier. He only spoke up once he saw that they went way beyond what he would have felt was justified. Okay, was there a question before we go on?
Yeah, I was wondering if by now the guilt of what they did to Joseph and not save him was just eating them to the core.
Well, Joseph event has not happened yet. That has not happened yet. The Joseph event has not happened. In Parshas, we're way before that. That's
okay. I was thinking maybe the guilt.
That's next week in Vayeshev. Next week,
their reputation.
Yeah,
is what they were really fighting for.
No. But that is not yet. That's next week in Vayeshev is with Joseph.
So Rabbi, I have a question before we go on.
Yeah.
So basically, with Shechem and Hamor, I mean Shechem does this, but Hamor is all in on it, and maybe the entire city of Shechem is all in on it. But what is the Beis Din's punishment for kidnapping? I mean, it's one of the "you shall not steal." It's kidnapping.
Correct.
And what is the punishment for kidnapping and rape?
So,
What would that be?
so
Is that the death penalty?
again, so this is what many of the commentators point out is they're looking for the halachic justification for what the brothers did. And they say that for the perpetrator of the crime, it would be for the Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Again, this is a violation of basic Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. And yes, it would be the death penalty. So that's
Okay.
for Shechem and for Hamor. What about the rest of the city?
So in other words, maybe it could, I don't know, but it could be that the entire city that didn't rescue or allow, in other words, if you don't do anything, it's maybe you're complicit in it. I don't know.
Exactly.
But I don't know. But the point that I'm getting at is that what Shimon and Levi have done, maybe they let their emotions get the best of them. Maybe they weren't completely objective, but in terms of what they actually did, halachically, forgetting
Absolutely.
halachically, it was justifiable.
And I'll prove that to you, because Yaakov never criticizes them by saying you violated halacha. He says you made a tactical error. But he doesn't say to them, how could you kill? He doesn't say.
But he punishes them in a sense.
Again, but why? Because they made a tactical error. You did something that put us at risk. We are so outnumbered by all the local Kanani and Prizi, and you did something without consulting me first that put our whole family in mortal danger. That was his complaint against them. His complaint is never.
But later,
no, that's clear. The pasuk says what he criticizes them was never you violated thou shalt not kill. He did not say that to them.
I hear you.
Was you made a tactical error by putting us all at risk. That was his complaint. And that's why, in a sense, he's punishing them, saying, I'm going to split you guys up because we can't have something like that happen.
But he doesn't punish them at this point. He punishes them at the very end of his life when he sees that it wasn't a tactical error. He wasn't attacked.
And that's what Rabbi Yaakov is doing here, is he's saying on a simple level, it looked like a punishment, but on a deeper level, it's not a punishment. What he's saying is, how can I channel that? You exhibited what led you to do this was because you felt your sister's pain in a way that none of the other brothers did. You felt your sister's pain as if it was your own pain, and that's what led you to act this way. That is a good midah. So how can I channel that to something positive by saying that the two of you guys will be wandering Jews, so to say, around the land of Israel, and you will be educating Jewish kids, you will be educating the youth, and you will be fixing Torahs, mezuzahs, and tefillin, because we need people for those jobs who are so passionate that says, I can't sleep at night. There's a Jew out there who's lacking a good pair of tefillin. I can't sleep at night. There's a community that doesn't have a Sefer Torah that's working. And who's going to feel that pain? Other people could just say, oh, yeah, that's too bad, and roll over and get a good night's sleep. You guys, you feel other Jews' pain. That has to be your job. That's how Rabbi Yaakov is learning this. I think that's a beautiful way to say it. It's not so much as a punishment as about, now that I've identified these traits that you have, how can we channel this for something positive and good and make sure that something very good gets done in the Jewish future? That's how.
That's clearer.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way to do it, and I think it makes a lot of sense, because and it could be the point you're saying as well, is that if they deserve the punishment, why not punish them immediately? Yeah, that could very well be. That's a good point that you're saying. But I want to move on to something, because the way Rabbi Yaakov just set this up is that Levi and Shimon and Levi, they are one and the same. They've got the same emotions. They feel Dina's pain. Yet what's startling is the way history played itself out. And I remember in a previous class years ago, someone made this observation, is that Shimon and Levi at this point are all in. They are so revolted by what's happened to Dina, and they feel a sense of achrayus, responsibility. They got to act. They're one and the same. Yet in a couple generations, their descendants couldn't be any more different. Fast forward to the incident at the end of Parshas Balak. Fast forward to what happens with Cosby, that Midianite woman, and who brings her publicly in the Jewish camp and starts fornicating with her was Zimri. What tribe was Zimri ahead of? Shimon. And who kills Zimri? Was Pinchas. Pinchas is from the family of Aaron. What Shevet is he from? Levi. So how does it happen that these two sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi, who are so intertwined right now, they're on the same page in terms of their devotion, the way that they care about the pain of their fellow Jews, and Yaakov puts them together, Shimon and Levi, Achim atem, your brothers, and I'm going to predict the same future for both of you. It really only looks like it works out well for Levi. What happened with Shimon? How did he get derailed? So I want to show you the same Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky is bothered by this, and I want to show you what he does with this. This is fascinating. So look at the bottom of page 3. Here, this is in the end of Parshas Vayishlach. So this is what Yaakov says to them on his deathbed. Shimon v'Levi Achim, your brothers, Klei Chamas Machareim, stolen instruments are your weapons. And then look at the last pasuk, Zion, Arur Apam, your wrath is cursed, not you, but your wrath. I don't like the sense of wrath yet. It was too mighty. Never some ki kashasa, your anger, because it's too harsh. Achalkem b'Yakov afitzem b'Yisrael. So they're in the same boat. Let's go to Rav Yaakov, what he says in Parshas Vayishlach. This is beautiful. I don't know if I ever saw this before. Look what he does here. Rashi explains, he says, Perish Rashi, around page 4. You will not find in Jewish history, when Yeshua brings them into Israel, they are poor sofrim who have to travel, scribes who have to travel from city to city to make a living, and malamde tinokos, the teachers of children, elam Shimon. They seem to all be coming from Shimon, and we know Levi. That was the job of Levi also, was to be teachers of Torah. So he says, "Kadeshiyu nefutzim v'shifto shalevi aso machzor al hagranos utrumos ma'asros." So there was a deep sense of poverty that hit both Shimon and Levi, that to become traveling scribes and teachers of Torah, and that was their destiny. That Rashi quotes this here, and it comes from other sources as well. So he says, "Ayin b'chidushenu leil." Look what we wrote earlier in Vayishlach, what we looked at earlier today. Shabiarti, I explained over there, even though there is a punishment against Shimon and Levi, even though you might view it as a punishment, it's not just a punishment. Yaakov saw these were lofty goals to be the sofrim, the scribes, and the teachers of children. And he says, Shimon and Levi, they're the men for the job because they feel the pain. So he says, Kirak, Shimon Valevi, Haruas Kanos. Only they had this type of kanos. What do we say about a kanoi? What's a kanoi? Is the words on the tip of my tongue. A zealot. Thank you, Leila. A zealot. Only they had exhibited this form of kanos. They said, how can we sit by when our sisters made into our harlot? Only they were called the brothers of Dinah, because they were willing to give their lives for her. In order to succeed at these tasks of being a Jewish educator and of being a traveling scribe, you have to appoint people who are zealot and also mesiras nefesh l'Hashem Torah, who are willing to sacrifice for God and His Torah. Anashim kisharon davar parutz. You need people that as soon as they see that something is problematic, miyad boer bam kinas Hashem, it burns in them this sense that I've got to be act with zealotry for Hashem Tzvakos. Keish lava, it's like a fire burning in their chest. They are the ones who are appointed to this task. Look, there we explain this. However, when we look into the matter further, did Shimon and Levi live up to the task? Azakin, their elderly father, did they live up to what their father assigned them? Anuroim, what do we see? Yeah, Levi did it. Levi did exactly what his role was supposed to be. Avalokin Shimon, not Shimon. Shimon didn't really live up to the task. Rak Shevet Levi anumotzim sha'amad kechoma. That it was only the Shimon Levi, Shevet Levi, the tribe of Levi, who stood like a wall, neged kolelu shekamala for bris Hashem, against anyone who was going to try to tear down the covenant of God. We don't find that the tribe of Shimon played any role. in order to be a protector of Hashem's Torah and the covenant. He says, how do you get to the bottom of this? Where did they change? What happened in Levi's life that made him succeed in this task and Shimon did not? I never saw this. Look at this point, he says. He goes, there's a very clear difference. Shevet Levi amazing. Shevet Levi, the whole time the Jews were in Mitzrayim for those 210 years and they were involved in slave labor, Shevet Levi did not work as slaves. How did they spend the time in Egypt? They were engaged in Torah study. They were able to channel those feelings of kanos, those feelings of zealotry, which they exhibited early on in their development. But what did they do? They harnessed it because they spent all those years in Mitzrayim learning Torah, engaged in Torah. That's why they were able to succeed in this role that Yaakov had set up for them. Therefore, when they saw this incredible desecration of God's name at the golden calf, that's why they jumped up and they said, we've got to act with zealotry. And they killed anyone who was involved in that. As Krovo, even if they were relatives. Anytime the Jews said, we're going back to Egypt, it was the tribe of Levi who said, no, not on our watch. We're not going back to Mitzrayim. And that's why, even though so many years had passed from the incident of Dinah till the Exodus, but they had spent time engaged in Torah study. So that channeled their kanos, their zealotry in the proper direction. That zealotry that had burned in their hearts at the early developmental stage, not only did it not dissipate, it did not weaken, it was channeled and it was strengthened by being engaged in Torah study. But look at the contrast. The zealotry of Shimon, it continued to burn, but there was nothing to channel it and guide it in the right directions. It had no boundaries. All that time in Egypt, they were slaves. They didn't have the ability to channel and rein it in with Torah. When is the worst time when Shimon, when their unrestrained zealotry came out in the ugliest fashion, and in a fashion in which it was just plain shameful? The Baal Peor, in the sin of Baal Peor at the end of Parshas Vayishlach, Zimri ben Salu, Hitris V'kina Neged Haragoso Ataranis Shel Moshe Rabbeinu, is that Zimri, the leader of Shimon, led his tribe to rebel against Moshe, and against all of the characteristic traits of modesty that had taken hold of Israel. By publicly fornicating with the princess of Midian, that's why it needed a Pinchas, Mishevet Levi, who's come from Shevet Levi, whose own zealotry had been restrained and had been guided by the Torah. It was only someone from Levi who could take down this descendant of Shimon. Look how it's coming generations later. Those same forces are coming forward, but Shimon's descendants never had that guidance that Levi's did. Anytime you have zealotry, which is not limited and it's not guided, according to halacha, it will not succeed. And not only will it not succeed, it'll be dangerous. It'll be destructive. It'll chase this person and destroy him from this world. It takes someone who is really steeped in Torah study to be able to recognize when does it make sense to use this midah, the character trait of zealotry, and to use it properly, and when does it make more sense to stand down and to sit this one out. Kana hamida is a nimsar. And the only one who knows how to use this and operate this midah is someone who has the key of the Torah in their hand. That was Shevet Levi. Shimon didn't have that. They had a very different experience in Mitzrayim. As a result of that, that same force that was operating within them, not only could it not act in a positive fashion, but it led them astray in a very destructive fashion. So I thought this is fascinating, is that look how this connects things. What we saw here in Parshas Vayishlach, the way Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky is learning this, there's a beautiful way to understand the incidents that occurred in Parshas Vayishlach, and this helps us understand what happened at the end of Yaakov's life when he does give this bracha, or you want to call it his prediction for the future. So then we're left wondering, so why did Shimon and Levi end up so different? And Rabbi Yaakov points out a theory. Here's the theory. Why they ended up so different is because Levi was able to refine that midah that he had, that character trait of kanos, of zealotry. Shimon did not have that opportunity. As a result of that, that's where things went astray. Now, they spent 40 years in the midbar, 40 years in the wilderness. After the incident with Zimri and Cosby, they spent years in the wilderness learning Torah. Maybe Shevet Shimon was able to get somewhat back on track. I don't know. We'd have to look if there's any sources that discuss that. But he says that's how it got to that point. I thought this was absolutely fascinating. So I'm gonna end this here. I think this was very, very interesting. I hope